Stealth Data 0. In this video, I'm going to show you another full pen testing demo. So what we're going to be doing is not so much as what an actual pen test would look like, but what we're going to do is represent hacking in its phases. So normally most ethical hackers would say that there's 3 phases of hacking. There is the reconnaissance phase, so that's where you're gathering reconnaissance, and normally this would happen over several days. You would browse social media, use tools like Maltego, which helps connect, companies to employees. Then you can get the employees' names, check out their social medias, get information on companies, entities, people, whatever the case may be. So you could perform maybe a phishing attack or a tailored attack to that company during a pen test engagement. So what you would be doing, like I said, is just gathering information on people, the company itself, and then of course the company's network. So we're going to start off just doing the network part of it. Of course, we're going to gather reconnaissance on the network that we have. We have a VirtualBox set up, Windows 10 Pro, that we will be attacking, and we have a server set up. So it would be, representing a smaller network, of course. Everything's downscaled, but these are the things that you would encounter in a actual network. You would encounter servers, you would encounter computers, you'd probably encounter some switches or Wi-Fi extenders, things of that nature as well. But I don't have those hooked up. Well, I do have those hooked up to the network, but we won't be focusing on, trying to pen test those or anything like that. But normally Wi-Fi extenders are actually weak spots of the network where you can gain the Wi-Fi password if you're doing an external pen test and have to get in that way, or if you're doing it through the web application. But let's go ahead and get started. Now, again, I'm not claiming to be the best hacker, or I'm not even claiming to be a hacker at all. Just simply sharing my knowledge as I learn and grow, and hopefully you guys learn and grow with me, and we just become a community, and we just learn together. So let's go ahead and get started on the video. And if you want to keep following my journey of hacking and learning hacking, subscribe. So let's go ahead and begin. So the first thing we'd want to do is gain the Wi-Fi password of the network. So we're going to skip that part, and let's say we already have done that. We have gained the Wi-Fi password of the network, and we've gained access to the network via one way or another. Either we got inside the building and we got on a computer inside the network, or we were sitting outside of the building and we gained access to the Wi-Fi itself. There's many ways to do this, but let's just say we're at that point of the pen test or engagement or hack or whatever you want to call it. So now we'll be gaining information on the network. So we would use Nmap. I also have Angry IP Scanner, so it's a port scanner. Nmap is a network mapper and port scanner. You can also do things like NetDiscover. So NetDiscover TAC I for interface ETH0. And this will actually give you MAC addresses. It'll start to collect ARP packets and give you MAC addresses and stuff like that for the devices. So as you can see, we got IP addresses for the devices on here, and what type they are, and MAC addresses for those devices. And you can find out what interface you're using by typing ifconfig, and you can see here that we have WLAN 0 because I do have a Wi-Fi chip adapter set hooked to this, and we also have ETH 0, which is the Ethernet connection, which I have connected to a bridge connection, not a NAT connection. Bridge connection gives this computer its own internal IP address instead of using the host computer's IP address and using that. And as you can see here, we also are connected to the Wi-Fi with both the WLAN 0 and ETH 0. But that's how you can find out what interface you're on, and then of course that's a quick way to gather some information on the network, get some IP addresses, but we need to dig a little deeper. So let's go ahead and do Nmap. So Nmap, and since we've gotten that IP address of the router, which you can either get by doing the NetDiscover, or you could do route, and it will actually tell you the router's IP address. Now there would normally be a 1 here, so we'll do Nmap TAC A. Oops. And there's many different scans you could do with Nmap. You could do less invasive scans, but this is going to be a verbose scan, very aggressive, very noisy, and it does require an actual handshake. There's stealth scans that you can do to make less noise, to make sure you're not detected. But we're just going to go ahead and do the full scan for the video. So we're going to scan the whole subnet mask. So we're going to do /24. And apparently my syntax is wrong, so no, it doesn't seem to be wrong. But this would be using ZenMap, which is the GUI version of Nmap. And then, as you can see, it's going to start performing that scan. So this can actually take quite some time. I'm also going to do it here on ZenMap itself. And you can pick what type of scan you're doing here. This is the GUI version of the tool we're using here, which is Nmap. GUI just means graphical user interface. So you could do the different types of scans, and Nmap can also help you scan for vulnerabilities as well, and really help you out. And as a pen tester, it's going to be a tool that you're using constantly. So here's where you input the target. And we're going to actually hone in on a specific target using ZenMap. So we're going to hone in on the server itself, the Apache server. So as you can see, if we were actually doing an internal pen test right now and we've seen all of these open ports, which you will see a lot of open ports, this is good news for us as a pen tester, because these open ports are ways that we could possibly access a device. As you can see, we have Telnet running on this device here at this IP address, And on that same IP address, there's a port 80's open, so that's going to probably be a server. This would probably be a server as well, which is the server of the router. So we could actually start to begin to try to pen test these objects. Normally the first thing I would do is just go ahead and try to put the router's IP address into the browser itself. And you can normally use default passwords to actually get into the router, and once you get into the router, you have a great amount of leverage and control. Now, in this case, we're not going to be breaking into the router, and we're not going to be focused on the router exploitation of things, but I just want to give you guys that kind of idea. Going after the router, a lot of businesses do not change the default password, so a quick way to get in and gain a lot of leverage is find the router's IP address, which is quite easy. You just type in route, or you use NetDiscover or Nmap, and as you can see, it's taking us to a Verizon router's login page, and we would obviously try to look up the default password, so you can actually search that. And a lot of places use Comcast, and like I know the default passwords by heart, so it would be high speed CAS admin is the password, or CAS admin is the user, CUS admin, and then high speed 21. But you can just type in, so you can find out what type of router it is, and Nmap will tell you that. And type in default router passwords into Google, and it will give you websites with a list of default router passwords, which I totally spelled wrong up there. And then you can also use tools like Hydra to try to brute force your way in, but that's just a little bit of router exploitation. Of course, you could use a tool like RouterSploit as well, but it's a way to gain a lot of leverage over a network very quickly, very easily. I've gotten into them, into a lot of buildings just by finding the router and using default passwords once you find out what type of router it is. So we're going to focus on this particular device we've seen here that has a lot of open ports. It was the 226. So as you can see, the 1226 here has a lot of open ports, which means it has a lot of services. And then what Nmap's going to start to do after it tells us what ports it found, it's going to start telling us what type of object it is, and what service it is as well. So we're going to focus on that 1226. So you can scan one object, you can scan multiple objects, and Nmap. And again, this is the same exact tool. This is just the graphical user interface. So as you can see, here's all the ports that I found for that device. So obviously, if we see that many ports open on a device, now you probably would not normally see that in a pen test. I mean, you might see about 5 or 6 ports open. But this is Metasploitable. It's made to be hacked. It's a Linux server, and what Nmap is going to actually do is tell us all of that, and then we'll be able to, and if you use it to map the network, you can actually see the actual physical topography of the layout and all of that stuff. So that is a little bit of a plus using ZenMap over Nmap. And we're actually going to just do a different scan. We're going to do a quick scan. That way we can get some information on here. And as you can see, so the scan can take some time. So we just did a quick scan to move along with the video. So as you can see, it tells us what port is open and then what service is running on it. And then if we did a more verbose scan, it would actually tell us what version of that service is on there. So that's very important. Once you find the service and what version it is, you can start to look up what type of exploits exist for that particular service, if any. It tells us the OS, so we know it's Linux, and we know that these services are running on it. So it looks like we have a login here. So one way we could actually get in is just trying to log in. Using that service on port for 513, 512, and 514. There are the login services, and then of course there's another way to attack devices, which is through the web browser itself. So we can actually take the IP address, since we do know this is a server, and then we can also put that into the web browser. So we go ahead and put this into the web browser, and we can see that we have a website. Now this is another way you could attack devices, is through the web application itself. Now we're not focusing on that on this particular pen test demo, but we are going to use this to find our way in. Now normally we would use one of these to find our way in, and you know, FTP is obviously a way that you can find your way in. You can try to brute force it, or you could try to, which means get the password for it, or try to get the password for SSH or Telnet. And normally I would be sniffing traffic with Wireshark and Responder and BetterCap, which can gain passwords. It can gain Telnet passwords. It can gain HTTP passwords. So these are tools that you can use in the reconnaissance phase to capture passwords and gain access to some of these services, especially Telnet. Telnet's extremely insecure, and I happen to know that this version of FTP that it's running, that if our Nmap scan is done, it will actually, nope, it's still going. It's going to be going for quite some time, but it will actually tell us the version, and then you can look it up on Searchboy. So for example, we put FTP and then the version number, but if you just type FTP, you can actually see that these are all exploits that are available on Exploit Database or on Metasploit, and they could be used with Metasploit to exploit file transfer protocol. So this is just trying to give you an idea of how protocols and open ports equal ways to try to find access to the device. Now what we're going to do is to find our vulnerability, because that's what you're looking for, vulnerability that you can either exploit or figure out what kind of device it is by using some type of client-side attack and making a payload and getting that payload on the device and get that payload ran. So that's all why reconnaissance is one of the most, if not the most important stage of hacking. The more information you have, the better you'll be able to find ways in. If one way fails, you can find another way in. So we're going to do PHP my admin, and if we just do a quick search, Google search of So we went and trying to figure out how to find of the version of PHP that we're running here on this server. So this is actually because the server is configured wrong. But this is going to actually allow us to go to a page that we shouldn't be able to as the viewer and find the PHP server info page. So we're going to do the website. So this would be a website's name, because all of websites host name is the IP address in words that a human can understand, but they're all IP addresses. So just pretend that this says, you know, whatever.com and then /php info.php. By trying different URLs, you might be able to find pages that will give you information and access to the server. So it can give you information that will lead to access to the server or access to the server itself. So there's like robot.txt, and there's a whole list of these that you can try. But this has to do with web exploitation. So what we're doing is we're not getting in and exploiting, doing SQL injection or anything like that. But we are doing some website exploitation to find out that this is the version of PHP. We shouldn't be able to get to this page as a visitor, but they configured it wrong and we're able to do so. So we can see that it's PHP version 5.2.4. Now if we go ahead and go to Searchploit, and if we open up Metasploit, alright, Searchploit didn't turn anything up, but Metasploit will. So we're going to start the PostgreSQL service, and then we're going to start Metasploit. And we're going to be using Metasploit to exploit the device. And as we can see with our scans, if we did it on ZenMap, it would start to tell us all the devices here. So I will go ahead and scan the full subnet range. But again, this is what you'd be looking for on all the devices. Open ports, what versions of services are running on those ports. If they're web browsers or web servers, they can be attacked by the web pages itself, you know, trying to get in with passwords or brute forcing, or using some type of exploitation of the configuration of the website. Sometimes you can get in by logging in with SQL injections, and I'll show you guys all of that during the web penetration phase. I'm trying to go through things, you know, step by step. I'm jumping around here and there, but if you check out my playlist, it will show you that I do have things broken down into like network pen testing and Android pen testing and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and go to Metasploit and search that version of PHP. And as you can see, it comes up with exploits. That being it, PHP could be, we could use an MSFN and PHP file, or we could use Weebly to access the device as well, and gain a backdoor into the device. But we know that that version of PHP is vulnerable. Again, you can also search Google to see if there's exploits for it as well. You can type in the type of device it is, the version, and then type, is there exploits for, or exploits for such device and such version. So we found this exploit. We're just going to go ahead and skip and say we did our research, and we found that this version of PHP is exploitable. And then if you type info, it shows us this particular version. So it gives us information about the exploit, and it tells us that this particular version of PHP is exploitable to this exploit. Right here, and here's the version we're running, and we found that because a misconfiguration in the website allowed us to use certain URLs, which took us to a page that we shouldn't have been able to see as a user. Found out what version it was running, and it's running a version of PHP that is exploitable. Now that could have been anything. That could have been any port and any service. But that's what you're looking for: vulnerabilities in these services, or trying to find their way in by passwords. And as you can see, it's telling us a bunch of devices here on the network, and this is what you'd more likely see on a larger network, is a ton of devices, which would give you more ways in. But as you can see, our Windows 10 is on there as well, and that's what we'll be attacking next. So we're going to set the rhost for the IP address of the router. And anytime you'll start to get more comfortable with this stuff, you'll know what port normally has what service, because unless the system administrator mixes it up, certain services run on certain ports. So we can go ahead and hit exploit, and if you want to learn about the exploit, you can hit show targets, and it will show you what targets it's for, and then you could do show options, and it will show you what options it needs. But all this needs is a rhost. So rhost is a remote host, so that's what we're pointing the exploit at. We're gonna go ahead and hit exploit. As you can see, it's gaining us a interpreter shell, and now we have a interpreter shell into that server that we were just looking at through the web browser. And hopefully this is giving you guys an idea of different ways that you can attack a device, either via the web browser. Again, we got information via the web browser doing reconnaissance, and we got information via Nmap, and of course you would use other tools as well, and it would take a lot longer. But again, reconnaissance is huge, so always do your reconnaissance. So you can see we have different files and stuff here. And if we drop into a shell, we can actually drop into the terminal. And for the Windows device, we'll actually, now you can do something called pivoting. So now that we have access to a device in the network, we could try to access the device that way. And you could use Armitage, which is a GUI version of Metasploit that has Nmap built in, and I will show you guys Armitage. So it will actually do the scans for you, and then it will tell you what exploits might work. It makes hacking actually really super easy, but you should definitely get used to using your command line, because you'll be limiting yourself a lot. But this would actually do the Nmap scan and then tell us what device it is, and then from that Nmap scan tell us what exploits might work, and then let us run exploits. And I will demonstrate Armitage later on. We're going to go ahead and just do a client-side attack to take over another device. So right now we have hold of one device with a interpreter shell using an exploit. Now normally here you'd want to put some type of backdoor into the device. That way if your shell dies you can get back into the device. But let's go ahead and attack the Windows 10 Pro device. What we're going to do for that is simply make a MSF Venom payload and use a multi-handler. So we're going to use our handy dandy cheat sheet, otherwise, our handy dandy notebook, otherwise known as the cheat sheet. And shameless promotion, I do sell this cheat sheet. It is 3 years of notes. I have all types of commands, Linux commands, CMD commands, how to use tools, but as you can see it's quite large. I sell it for $5. You can get it via PayPal, or you can get it with PayPal or Western Union or Cash App, but I prefer PayPal. But as you can see, it tells you how to run different interpreter commands, how to open up different tools, run different exploits, different commands for everything from the interpreter shell to terminals, and also how to download it in tools. It's just endless knowledge. That's just priceless, and you guys will see me use this all the time. And of course, as a pen tester, I encourage you to make your own. You know, obviously it's just a text file, so you guys don't have to buy it or anything like that. But I do sell it because I've had people who've wanted to buy it. So it is for sale. So we went ahead and did some Windows Trojans. We're going to go ahead and make a MSF Venom script here. Now you can watch my videos on MSF Venom, but basically this is removing bad characters. It's using a limited knob size, it's using encoding, and it's using encryption to help bypass antivirus. Now, on a fully patched Windows 10 machine, an MSF Venom payload like this in the raw wouldn't have much of a shot. Now, using all of these techniques together, the limited knob size, the encoding, the encryption, using HTTPS, all of that stuff would definitely help, especially removing the bad characters, because that changes the code of the payload itself. But you'd probably want to use a tool to generate an MSF Venom payload that is made to make less detectable MSF Venom payloads. But you can see what version of Windows it is, and if it's like Windows 7 or Windows 8 or Windows XP, which I've seen all the time in companies, you can easily use these payloads to gain access to them and gain full control over them. And then there's tools that make pretty undetectable ones, and then you can also edit them and code them yourself. Edit them and code them yourself, and use veil evasion and things of that nature to make sure that it's not detectable by antivirus. Now again, I'm not claiming this to be undetectable by antivirus by any means. Like I said, MSF Venom payloads are normally detected by antivirus because of how much they are used. So that's going to go ahead and generate our payload in our servers file, which we would then use social engineering from the recon phase. Maybe we found one of the employees' names inside of the servers file, so we were in the servers and we found employees' names, or we just, Googled, like say it was a hotel, and found the CEO's name, and then we made a phishing email. But either way, we use social engineering to deliver this payload to the client. So you could, like I said, you make some type of phishing email saying it's from a supervisor of a lower level employee. They'll want to read it, mark it as urgent, tell them to run the file, and normally that's how a lot of these things end up happening. So that's going to go ahead and make our payload, and we're going to have to do service Apache 2 start to start our Apache server to serve the payload up. And I'm going to go over to the victim machine, and let's just say we skipped that part, and what we did is we found out that the CEO's name is Johnny Hackney, and Johnny Hackney is sending an email to Sarah telling her that she needs to run this file and update her computer immediately because there was a security breach. And being from the CEO, and we made it look like it's from the CEO and made it look like it's from the company, she has no reason not to believe it. So let's go ahead and do what our boss is telling us and run this file that is supposed to be protecting our computer. Now again, you can bind files and bind them with working EXEs, and when it comes to social engineering, it really takes your payload a long way if the payload actually works. And I show you guys all of that, and I'll leave links in the descriptions and how to deliver payloads using social engineering, and of course it's on my channel as well. So we're going to open up the Firefox browser, on the victim Windows 10 computer, and we're playing Sarah, an employee of the company. And we're clicking on the link that the email told us to go to. And that would lead us to, it's very easy to make a website that looks like a file sharing website, and then it would deliver the exe file. So very easy, very simple, and all she has to do is, click yes and click run. All the things that you would normally do. And of course you could put all of that inside of the email. You can also do text messages, phone calls, all types of things. So that is where social engineering comes into play with hacking, and it's also very important. So what we need to do is get a multi-handler. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit exploit again just to start this shell, and then I'm going to background it with Control-Z. I'm going to hit back. I'm going to use multi/handler. And set the L port for the port that we use for the payload. And again, if you want more information on making payloads, check out my other videos of how to deliver them with social engineering and how to make the payloads. But our multi-handler is what we're going to use to catch the signal of the payload. Or set L host, I'm sorry. Which is our internal IP address. Then we use the Windows/interpreter /reverse _ HTTPS payload. We're going to go ahead and exploit, and hopefully Sarah ran our payload. We should always have our listener listening before we send out the payload. So as you can see, our phishing email worked, or phishing website, whatever you want to call, whatever method you chose to use in the scenario. And we see that we have another session open to another device on the network. So we now have access to 2 devices on the network, and we could use these 2 devices as footholds into the network, and then start spreading to other computers from these devices. Now you can actually use the control of these devices. So we'll do sysinfo. You can see that we're in a Windows 10, and if I hit Control Z and background this, and then hit sessions, you can see that we have a session into the Linux server, and we have a session into the Windows 10 computer. And from here you can actually use the control of these 2 devices to gain more information and more access and actually hack other devices from the devices you have control over. So once you have a foothold like this, you'd want to put back doors on these devices. That way you can get back into them and always make sure you have access back into the network. You have access to 2 devices, one using an exploit so you can normally get back in the mess it gets patched or whatever, and then one with a payload, so you'd probably want to hide that payload and also put some type of backdoor again into both of these. That's called persistence, and that's normally the next thing you want to worry about as soon as you get into a device. That way, if your shell died like this one did, you can just regain access. Now with an exploit, sometimes you can just run it again and regain access. Sometimes exploits don't work again. So make sure you put a backdoor and some type of persistence. But this would be our foothold into the network. We have control of 2 devices. Then from here we'd backdoor them, and then we'd try to spread from these devices to other devices. And again, you can actually use the control of these devices or information from these devices to find other devices on the network and gain access to them. And you can actually hack the other devices. Like I can hack it from this hacked Windows machine. So you're spreading kind of like a spider web through the network. So hopefully this video gave you guys an idea. I know it was a lot of information, but how social engineering comes into play, how the stages of hacking are. So what we would do next is called post-exploitation. So what we did was reconnaissance, which is obviously what you're going to be spending the most time on when hacking. That's what hacking mostly is. It's not like the movies. Then you're going to be doing exploitation, so you're going to be gaining access to the devices, and then you're going to be doing post-exploitation, which is trying to put backdoors into the devices to gain more access and more leverage. And we'll go ahead and just demonstrate a little bit post-exploitation. So we'll do sessions 3, which will take us into our Windows session. And we're going to go ahead and just upload another payload onto the device. So we'll upload, we'll say it's a backdoor, and there's persistence built in on the interpreter shell, or you can use your a custom script. So we'll actually go ahead and use a custom script here, a Python script I wrote that's undetectable. And we just need to change this. And change this. And then we can actually upload it. And then if we actually ran that file, so we can open up another terminal, use a netcat shell. So this would be post-exploitation, like gaining persistence here. So normally you'd want something that's undetectable, and this payload is undetectable. And and one that would give you persistent access, which means you can contact it. So you want to use backdoors or something that's calling out to you constantly, and I do explain that in my backdoor videos. So next, what we would do is run this file, and we'll actually run it from the system itself. So we can see here, here's the file we uploaded. Now, doing this in a real pen test, you'd want to hide it, not put it on the desktop. And as you can see from running the file, we can log into our backdoor, and we now have a shell into the same Windows device. And if our interpreter shell happens to die, we could just start our payload using the persistence that we have. So this would be post-exploitation, you know, things you do after you get into the device to make sure you can stay in the device or get whatever files you were looking for. So hopefully this gave you guys an idea of the phases of hacking, which are reconnaissance, which what you'll be doing the most of, then exploitation, actually gaining access into the device or into the devices, and then post-exploitation, making sure you can maintain access to those devices and then also spread throughout the network. And hopefully it gave you guys an idea of how you're looking for either what type of device it is, so you can make a payload for it. So we found out that there was a Windows box, so we made a Windows payload and got it delivered using social engineering in this scenario. And we found out from ill-configured pages that there was a vulnerable version of PHP running, and we went ahead and use that vulnerable version of PHP to exploit the server using an exploit. So I demonstrated an exploit and I demonstrated a client-side attack, which are two different types of attacks. And then another way to get in is via passwords, which I demonstrated in my last pen testing demo. So hopefully you found the video informative. If you did, go ahead, drop a like, and as always, keep pen testing. And like I said, I don't claim to be, you know, the best pen tester or hacker or know-it-all out here. I'm simply on a journey with you guys, growing and learning. And as always, have fun, stay safe, keep pen testing. Peace out. And that was just your basic, not really per se a pen testing demo, but I wanted to show the reconnaissance phase, then the exploit phase, and then the post-exploit phase. So basically the main three phases of hacking, and I mainly used exploits, and I used what you would have to use social engineering and client-side attacks, but we simply just uploaded it ourselves because we had control of the other device, obviously. But I showed you the three main areas, which is reconnaissance, which is the most important part, because the more you know, the more vulnerabilities you can find. I showed you the tools that you can do it with. Now there's multiple paths, multiple gateways, especially when attacking a server, because you can attack from the web interface itself, you can attack the server itself, you can attack somewhere inside the network. And once you understand how the network is formed, you can find different ways to get in and figure out ways to move through the network, pivot, infect other devices, and so on and so forth. And that's how you would do a pen test in a corporate company. So you're basically looking for a way in. So remember reconnaissance, then the exploit phase when you actually gain access to something, and then the post-exploitation phase when you set up persistence and start looking around and pivoting and things like that. So hopefully you found the video informative. If you did, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe for more content, and as always, have fun.